It's Wednesday, June 19th, 2019, and this is the Pro and Con Show, and I'm your host, Michael James Ott. Welcome to the show. So we try to look at the news from the different perspectives, and I have the 5 different websites that I look at on a regular basis. So let's just jump to it, because I think there is an excellent example of, the worst. I will call it the worst of the so-called news media. But first, let's just hit on some of the top headlines. So, the Huffington Post says Dems slam on Biden because he's out of step. And what this is about is Mr. Biden. It would seem, well, what he's doing is because he has whatever it is, a 45-year history of political, political history in the House of Representatives and Senate and so on, Vice President and on. And he has a tendency, he's a kind of an older man, he has a tendency to reminisce. And he's reminiscing about the civility of some of the senators that he used to deal with. Unfortunately, some of those were some of the most or the strongest proponents of segregation, which yes, there's a percentage of you out there that still thinks that that's a good idea, but the vast majority of us, thank God, think that segregation was horrific and rightly so. So anyway, that's part of the story is Mr. Biden, with his nostalgia, is talking about that. So let's go to the CNN, and CNN's top stories are that the pilot, Mr. Sullenberger, who was nicknamed Sully, he was the guy, I think it was the Hudson River. Don't quote me on that, but anyway, he took off and he landed a plane on I want to say it was the Hudson River, and saved everyone's lives. And he's notably one of the best pilots and does a lot of training and so on. Well, he was in a simulator for the Boeing 737 MAX, and they put him through some of the issues that the pilots have been facing in this plane with, I think there's a problem with the software and certain sensors. Anyway, that causes the pilots to see something very much different than what they expect. And in fact, he says here that he can see how crews have run out of time trying to figure out what's going wrong before the plane crashes. So that's basically, he's kind of affirming that Boeing has probably had has some culpability here, because the planes were so hard to fly. If certain things happened, the pilots would really struggle with getting the thing resolved before the plane crashed. And there was 2, 3, 4 Boeing 737 MAX crashes. So that's the main headline on CNN, other than says that Elizabeth Warren is climbing in the polls. So it's my understanding that Mr. Biden is losing some of the support in the polls, so his poll numbers are dropping. Mr. Sanders is roughly staying mostly the same. And then Mr. Buttigieg and Elizabeth Warren and Amy Klobuchar apparently are coming up some in the polls. But it's a long way to go. And to correct a statement I made a couple of days ago, I was thinking the first Democratic primary debate was tonight, and it's actually a week from tonight. So apologize for that. I was pretty darn sure it was going to be tonight, and looking forward to watching it, to be, again, as I'm encouraging all of you to be, much more aware and involved, even if you're a Republican, to understand who these people are and some of the things that they're promoting, and get a sense for them as individuals, by watching them. And I couldn't strongly enough say that whether you're a Democrat or Republican, you should be interested in the opposing party's candidates, especially because, unfortunately, at the moment, we have this effectively a two-party system with the puppeteers that I've talked about in the past. So I won't keep going there. Let's move on. So National Public Radio, their head report says, so there's a UN report implicating the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia in the killing of the journalist Khashoggi. I'm probably not pronouncing that right. Khashoggi? I apologize. I humbly apologize. I'm probably getting it wrong. But anyway, Khashoggi. Anyway, so the UN report has come out and kind of confirmed what a lot of the news reports from some months ago had said. They also are reporting on the various Democrats and Democratic candidates getting after Biden for his civil relationship with segregationist former colleagues. Hope Hicks is testifying before Congress behind closed doors. She was the communications director in the White House for some time. She was a favorite of Mr. Trump, and she left a year and 3 months ago or something, and she is complying partially with the subpoenas. She is answering some of the questions. Mr. Trump is telling her not to answer all of them. And so we'll see how that comes. Back to the environment, which is a focus of NPR. And if you watch my show in the past, it should be a focus of all of us. So yet more evidence that something is awry, something is changing, in that they've used satellite images from spy satellites, that the images have become public, and these images show the Himalayan glaciers, and based on the images they can tell how those glaciers have changed over the last decades, and they are melting twice as fast as they were just a few decades ago. So again, the concentration of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere is solidly twice what it was hundreds of years ago, and increasing. And again, everyone knows, all scientists, all engineers with any that are respected in any way in their fields, I fully acknowledge that carbon dioxide is a warming influence in our atmosphere. And then they have an article that says who in the House is calling for impeachment. There's currently 69 representatives out of the 435. All those are Democrats except for the one Republican, and they're calling for the impeachment process to begin. House Speaker Pelosi opposes launching the impeachment probe until there's a larger public support for it. So I imagine as time grows, so what is happening in the interim is they're trying to get Hope Hicks and McGahn and several others in to testify to try to gain information. I think the Democrats obviously hope that increasing information will increase the awareness and cause more people to favor looking into Mr. Trump in an impeachment proceeding. Fox News doesn't really have anything on it other than I don't really see anything here. Let's just skip to Breitbart. So Breitbart, of course, they have this. I'll show you this picture. They have a Mr. Biden on the front. So Breitbart generally leans toward Republican or conservative. You can see that's less than a complimentary picture of Mr. Biden. But what I really want to point out is Mr. Nolte has written an article down here, and so it says, "Media Scramble to Protect Their Hero" by John Nolte. And it's an article about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And basically, she said that she feels like the immigration holding facilities are concentration or internment camps. Concentration camps is the term that she used, which is partially inflammatory depending on your viewpoint. But Mr. Nolte goes on to write this again, just the rhetoric. Oh my God, it's shameful. It's shameful. If you're reading this article and you only read Breitbart, it can be entertaining, and I get that some people may be leaning this way or feeling some of these things, but the facts, the who, the what, the where, the when, and what is with all this name calling and stuff like that. So they're saying that, I'm not even going to read this thing, but this is a highly inflammatory, unbelievably biased article that really shows the worst behind some of the so-called media that's out there. And so, in fact, he refers to her repeatedly as Ocasio crazy in this article. And so these are migrant camps. And so never mind that the migrant camps were in use before President Trump took office. Never mind that the migrants, they're not illegal migrants, by the way. They're just migrants because they would be illegal if they made it beyond the camps. They're in the camps, so therefore they're not illegal. They enjoy free food and health care and sanitary conditions. Well, partially. But basically, never mind. I mean, this is perfectly okay under the Obama administration, but it's a concentration camp now because Orange Man is bad. And again, just full of piss and vinegar. And please do not allow yourself to be biased by this kind of thing. So as to the actual use of the word concentration camp, because there are some people that they immediately went to, some of the survivors, there's not many of them these days, of the concentration camps with the Jews and the Poles and others from the Nazi regime in World War II, and they asked them, well, what do you think about the use of concentration camp? And some of them were kind of okay with it, and others were like, no, it's not the same thing. Ours was worse. But let me just read you the definition of concentration camp. So, It is a noun. It is a place where large numbers of people, especially political prisoners or members of persecuted minorities. So these migrants are trying to come in. They're a minority in this country. And they are deliberately imprisoned in a relatively small area with inadequate facilities. Now, this first part of the definition is mostly true, and a lot of it has to do with there's a lot of migrants trying to come in to our country, and we're holding them in these camps, and the camps are way beyond their original capacities. So therefore, because those camps are well beyond their original capacities, there almost certainly is inadequate facilities there in various degrees. Now, so then the tie to the concentration camps of the Nazi Germany regime. Okay, so the term is so that's the definition: relatively small area with inadequate facilities. Okay, now sometimes to provide forced labor or await mass execution. That's sometimes, and that was true back in the days of Germany. There were some of the concentration camps that were far, far worse than others, and some of them were associated with forced labor and or mass execution, but others were not. And so the term, here's just to finish, the term is most strongly associated with several hundred camps established by the Nazis in Germany in occupied Europe, and the most infamous being Dachau, Belsen, and Auschwitz. So, depending on, again, it's the coin, right? Here we go. It's the coin. Okay? So, depending on if you were a Holocaust survivor and someone starts talking about concentration camps, your vision of that word immediately entails forced labor and mass execution and truly some of the most horrific things that have been visited upon humanity by humans, in our history. I'm sure there are worse, but to smaller groups. But my God, I mean, this was millions and millions of people. It was absolutely horrific. And so if you're approaching it from that perspective, yeah, you're going to say, those are not concentration camps on the southern border, okay? But if you approach it from a different perspective, which is just large numbers of people, and depending on, minorities, okay, and by the fact that they are being viewed as minorities and maybe, depending on your perception, again, you could perceive them as being persecuted, and in a relatively small area, check, that's true, relatively small area with inadequate facilities, okay? So, and she says she will, there were some people saying, well, you should apologize or say something about the use of the word concentration camp. And she wants to emphasize that she feels like these people are being persecuted and the facilities are inadequate, so she's going to keep using the term concentration camp. And there you have it. Okay? So Mr. Nolte is going on and on and on in his article about, how this is a bunch of, baloney and, again, the leftist media and blah, 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 and Ocasio-Cortez is a liar and a horrible person and doesn't deserve to live. Well, all of that is, again, people please. Who, what, where, when, and leave all the hate out of this. And just understand where people are coming from. We can be and are actually a lot closer together We just don't understand each other. Let me say that again. You know, we have these people that are trying their very best to keep us on opposite sides of the street. But the reality is, if we strip away all of the crap that they're trying to sell us, and we just say, you know, please tell what are the facts, who, what, where, and when, where are you coming from, how are you perceiving this, let me express that also, okay? And then, now that we've got the whole coin, what do we do with it? And that doesn't have to be full of hate. In fact, just the opposite. It'll be full of understanding and compassion and reasonable behavior. All right, so for Wednesday, June 19th, this has been the Pro and Con Show. I've been your host, Michael James Ott. Please tune in again. And yeah, time's up. So bye for now.